Live from YouTube, it's Monday night. Teal Tinted Glasses on the show tonight. Thank you for joining us, by the way, because there's some playoff game going on right now, and we are going to discuss playoffs. So on the show, playoffs, the future of the San Jose Sharks, the future of the Nashville Predators. What are the Sharks doing at the World Championships? We'll talk about that. Of course, the viewer/listening mail, always sweet to have some questions. So we've got that on the show this evening. Dialing 6 is Hockey Jerk. Is it day one-ish?
You know what? I think I'm thinking a couple things. Number one, how dare the Winnipeg Jets? This is now twice in the last 3 shows that they've gone head-to-head with us. Secondly, down since day one-ish with Mark Scheifele, always. I know you are as well, Kevin.
That's right.
No, happy to be back. Had to sit on the sidelines the last one, but I'm here. I'm ready to party. So let's do this.
Nice. Now, Hockey Jerk hasn't been on in a few weeks, so it's good to have him back and to listen to what's been going on while Hockey Jerk has been on assignment. Please hit the subscribe button if you haven't already, and so that you get the little alerts every time we have a show, and you can go back and check the archives. And then, of course, if you're listening on SoundCloud, Google Play, iTunes, TuneIn, Stitcher, etc. Of course, you can catch the archives there. Thank you for listening. Thank you for watching. I'm Kevin Lacey. I'm dialing 0 for all of my hockey information. Because I have no idea what I'm doing. So do they even have operators anymore? I don't know. And then last but not least, dialing those late night 1-900 live links numbers. It's Ian Reed.
It's true, and this is why I'm bankrupt. Welcome to Teal Tinted Glasses, episode 44. We have a pretty stacked show as always. I'm sure even if the notes weren't stacked, they have like 4 lines, we'd still end up talking for an hour and a half, I'm sure. Yeah. But yeah, so I mean, we're here. We're a week removed from our little postseason autopsy. We don't have Drew tonight. Unfortunately, Drew managed to escape the cage I built for him, which I'm pretty upset about. I think Hockey Jerk left the cage open after feeding him.
Well,
I don't know.
Now, if I can jump in here,
Absolutely.
I am not replaceable. So, when we get Drew was on
spiked the last 2 weeks. Wait a minute, I wasn't on 2 weeks ago. Damn it!
I was gonna say, if you want to see our show at our best, go back to those episodes I wasn't on. No, I'm just kidding.
Wow.
But no, you know what, Drew, he got his 15 minutes of fame. Covered me a couple times. It's cool, whatever. But you know what, big dog's got to come back.
That's true. And we are an NHL. We discussed other leagues, obviously, but we are an NHL show, so we can only discuss so much Carolina Hurricanes talk before the league steps in and goes, no, Penguins.
Yeah, well, and that's Mike Neves asked in the chat, or saying where was I? I was actually covering Game 6 in Pittsburgh. You may have saw me. Vince G. Took a paparazzi picture of me. I was the guy with the big 3 shaved into my chest, getting in on the fun before I had to go to work. But here we are.
So let's get this party started here. Obviously, we had locker room cleanout day. I don't think we learned a ton more than we kind of covered last week. Joel Ward was pretty confident that his time in San Jose is up. Not that surprises any of us. I think last show, I mean, I know you weren't here, Jerk, but I'm sure we were all in agreement that it would be probably very highly unlikely Joel Ward would return before we heard him speak.
Yeah, well, you kind of knew that the writing was going to be on the wall for Joel Ward. I mean, he, sustained the injury, and then he's finally healthy and, can't find his way back into the lineup. And so I'd say about there is when I was like, okay, maybe we're just pulling the Band-Aid right off and, moving on. And I think it's the right move. Obviously, the league as a whole is getting faster, and you want to stay with the trend. And the unfortunate thing is that Joel Ward just hadn't scored at the pace that he scored at that first year with the Sharks. And
right,
you kind of hope he catches on somewhere else. But I think it's the perfect time to separate.
Yeah.
Speaking of scored, we have a goal. I didn't actually see who shot it, but I believe it was Kyle Connor from a tough angle under the arm of Marc-Andre Fleury, and it's 2-1.
It was Kyle Connor.
Kyle Connor.
Everybody's Winnipeg Jets.
Yeah. So Joel Ward, I mean, I think that the positive thing about the Joel Ward moving on is that he was unseated by the youth, right? I mean, this wasn't like the Sharks brought somebody in to replace Joel Ward. He got pushed out by some of the younger guys, and I think that's a huge positive. And I love Joel Ward. Like, I don't want anyone to say that I don't like Joel Ward. I love Joel Ward, but I mean, I just, like I said last show, I just feel like his time here, it was up, and I think that the positive is he was pushed out by the youth, and that's the kind of things that we want to see going forward. Kevin, any final thoughts on Joel Ward, who says he's done?
That says to me that Joel Ward is hoping to play next season, which I guess, really, when you think about it, does anyone really choose to retire? I mean, unless you're Mike Fisher, and we'll get to that. but I mean, like, in most cases, guys are going to try and prolong their career as long as possible. So, but for me, I really thought, oh no, Jonathan Marchessault scored. So Joel Ward has brought along 2 goals in this game. So I have no idea what you're talking about. He can't score because he's scoring for each team apparently now, just by being mentioned. Good for him to try and get picked up by a team next year. I don't see it happening. He does not have the legs at this point. So
I think someone will take him on, even like
a non-playoff team in August will love him.
I disagree. If Shane Doan couldn't, or are you saying a non-playoff team trying to get into the playoffs this year, you mean?
Oh, sure.
Okay. I agree, except that I just feel like if Shane Doan couldn't get picked up, Jerome McGinley couldn't get picked up anywhere, Joel Ward's not going to get picked up.
These guys are those guys were in their 40s at this point, though, too.
True.
Yeah, and I think Kevin makes a good point, though, because even when Joel Ward started out, when he was on Nashville and even in Washington, do you ever remember him having any semblance of like some foot speed? I feel like he was always just a little. I was gonna say average skater. On a bad day, he was borderline cement skates, but I don't feel like he ever really dazzled with his skating.
He just scores clutch goals in the playoffs. That's all he does.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, if you could if it was like bubble hockey where he could just stay in front of the net the whole time, you keep him every year.
This pucker, right? Was there an earthquake? As the, geez, like
there
really is. The Golden Knights are apparently really the apocalypse. Like,
I did not feel an earthquake.
Okay, well, sorry, puck guy, you're crazy. Moving on. Yeah, so obviously, I think we heard some injuries. Donskoy was banged up. So as much as I bagged on Pavelski last show, and I still stand by that, actually. But his line was pretty broken. But I think my criticism of Pavelski last show was fair. If you want to know who's healthy, of course, you can find out who's going to go play in the Worlds, because that's usually what a lot of healthy players do. Mark-Edward Vlasic obviously went. Timo Meier is there. Rudolph Balcers has been just silly there, doing all the highlight reel stuff. Bodker and Hansen are both there. I mean, Hansen's a Shark until July 1st, right? One omission that people were quick to point out, but then kind of realized it would be silly for him to go, was Tomas Hertl, who normally would jump at the chance to go play more hockey at these things. Obviously, Hertl would be playing without a contract at this point, and that's just bad. And that's just bad juju. You don't go and play in the Worlds without a contract.
I'm fine with that too, and I've been meaning to tweet this for a week now. But Tomas Hertl had a wonderful playoff for the Sharks. Like he was wonderful. It was exactly what he needed to take a step, hopefully take the next step in his career. But just as big is the fact that he finally now goes into an off season with no rehab needed. I think that's even bigger. Like, so I'm fine with him not playing in the World Championships because this guy has either been playing or on rehab since he was drafted by the team.
Yeah. Yep. And I like what you said, Kevin, too. You say he was, had his best season. I thought, he was the best player, no doubt in my mind. I mean, clutch goals, in on the forecheck, smart with the puck. Like, he was just doing everything right. And like you said, the fact that he doesn't have to rehab is so great for him. And, all he really needs is, just conditioning in the summer, skating, shooting, all the same things that'll just keep your physicality, where it needs to be. And then he can come in on September and, he can really push for some big minutes here. And I mean, I know he's kind of already established with Logan Couture, but I have this very deep down nervous feeling that we're going to get to day one of training camp and he's going to be centering his own line.
Yeah, I could see it. I mean, it really depends on what they do this summer too. Like, he might have to do that by, I mean, we can talk about Joe Thornton who says that he definitely wants to be back, but depending on how the summer plays out, I mean, wouldn't that kind of might be by necessity, no?
Yeah, probably. And I mean, with preseason lineups, I mean, you're bound to see some weird things. So I don't know. I think we've gone through this song and dance way too many times. It's obvious Hertl plays his best hockey at the wing, and I think that just needs to be, where he is.
I think a lot of that depends on what the Sharks do in free agency, and that's still a couple months away. But depending on if they pick up a center or they pick up a wing or whatever, because like I'm looking at the depth chart right now, center, they have depth. I mean, if you're going to consider Pavelski as the number one center, then they're doing okay there. But like the right wing is pretty brutal. So if anything, you move Pavelski to right wing. And if you don't add anything, then Hockey Jerk, I guess that's the door for Hertl to move back into center, which, again, like you just said, don't know if we really want that.
And, I mean, you're hoping that the way he played with Couture this past season, you're hoping it's allowed his game to move in a forward position and give him confidence to where maybe he can have that same impact as a center. And I mean, he spent the whole season taking faceoffs with Couture, so he's pretty much halfway there.
That's what I was going to say too. I mean, it's not like he's, other than obviously he goes back positionally and plays the wing, but I mean, really he's good in the draw. He took most of Couture's draws. That's another thing too, though. Like, depending on what happens this summer, like, do you really mess with that combination? I don't. Like, I would be really annoyed to see Hertl and Couture separated, depending on, again, what happens over the summer. But with the team as it stands right now, I don't understand why you would separate Couture and Hertl at this point, other than to, because if anything, make that the top line and push other guys down.
Yep. At
this point, I think, depending on who comes in and who goes out, but based on the team as it stands right now, with the roster as we know it right now, I mean, I don't see why, you can't push Pavelski down to 2C and have that line eat up the majority of the minutes, frankly.
Yeah.
So obviously,
maybe the Sharks will get lucky and one of the 4,000 kids on the Barracuda will take a step forward and make the team as a surprise, like a Halbiga Watts or something will make a shocking.
You know what? I think this year I really see Rourke Chartier as a dark horse for that 4C spot.
Is he going to be healthy, though?
I mean, considering what he's gone through the last year and a half, he looked pretty damn good in the end of the regular season and the playoffs. And you think about who's coming in. I mean, Gregor can play center. Blickfield is a center. Gambrell. I don't know if Gambrell starts in the NHL. I mean, he might for all I know, but even if he doesn't, he's going to be a fixture on the Barracuda.
Absolutely.
And, we've seen what Chartier can do in the AHL. We saw what he did in Kelowna. I think it's his time to get some NHL games.
I think if Chartier can stay healthy, I mean, he's definitely a threat for the roster. I feel like if I look at the depth chart and this is in my mind, and it's worth garbage, but I probably have Gambrell ahead of Chartier in my center depth chart.
I actually have Gambrell 1, Latunov 2, and Chartier 3 on my center depth chart.
Ooh, an interesting wrinkle.
That is an interesting. I like that. I like that. I like that. I don't know if I agree, but I like it. I like your moxie, sir.
That's okay.
But speaking of Hertl, obviously the Sharks, weren't able to really get to this last show. The Sharks have 3 restricted free agents, obviously guys that they're going to have to take care of. And it kind of made me laugh because it was like, oh, well, Hertl wants to stay. It's like, Hertl doesn't have a choice. Like, unless someone gives him a fat offer sheet, he's not going anywhere. And when's the last time you've seen an offer sheet? Like, I mean, it's good to hear like that he wants to stay. I mean, we watched Jacob Trouba hold out, a season ago. Maybe it was even the start of this year. I don't know. It's been such a long season. So obviously you want your RFAs to say they want to stay, but I find it kind of, I don't know, amusing because it's like Joe Thornton, like it means more from Joe Thornton because he has the option to leave, whereas Hertl really is team controlled at this point. So it really doesn't matter if he wants to stay or not. All our RFAs this year are arbitration eligible, which means that they can go in front of an arbitrator if they can't come to a deal and let an arbitrator pick a deal for them. I think it would be really very important for the Sharks to avoid arbitration with Hertl specifically. I think an arbitrator would probably pay Hertl more than the team probably wants to. The other thing with arbitration is it's an awful process, and you don't want to. With Hertl, I think Hertl should be a part of the long-term plan. You really don't want to fracture that relationship with the franchise, because when you go into arbitration, the team's basically going to say terrible things about you to get your number down. And, there's been cases of full-grown men, and Hertl's still a child in my eyes. We've had full-grown men that have walked out of arbitration hearings in tears. And we don't want that for Hertl. Hertl's he's just a kid. He's a little boy.
I look at those 3 names. You've got Hertl, you've got Tierney, you've got DeMello, and with all 3 of them, and again, this is if it's GM Jerk at the helm, you have to look at what they did, not in their year, on their deal, because all 3 of them had really good years this year.
Mm-hmm.
But it's their first good year ever, at least in my eyes. And, Hertl had his best season this year, but the first year of that bridge deal, I would argue that he was just okay. Same thing with Chris Tierney. Really good year this year, but, the past 2 years, he was just okay. And Dylan DeMello, his first full-time year in the league. I mean, last year he was somewhere between, a healthy scratch and a questionable, asset. And so I think all 3 of these guys, you have to consider what they've done on their most recent deal as opposed to what they've done in this past year.
Kevin?
I'm sorry, I was commenting in the chat.
Oh, my bad. I agree. I mean, it's Hertl. The thing with Hertl, is that this is like really, has Hertl ever been healthier than he was this season?
I don't think so. That's why I say like this is the first.
When he started with the Sharks.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
So a whole couple months before Dustin Brown killed him.
Pretty much.
Okay, like that's the thing with Hertl. Like I think when and this works to his advantage. I think 2 other, especially if you went into an arbitration hearing, is that like we're healthy. Like obviously staying healthy is an issue, but healthy, he had this career year. I mean, I don't know. For me, like Hurdle's the guy you want long term. You just want him at a deal that makes sense for the team at this point.
You know, if I recall, if the decision ends up actually completing the arbitration, it can only be a certain length of contract, right?
2 years.
It can only be a 1 year deal.
Yeah, 1 year. I thought it can be 2.
1 or 2 years, something like that. So
I think it's only 1 year. Yeah.
Okay.
What you're saying about locking him in long term, that I agree. I think that's the path that the Sharks go, and if that's the case, I don't think it even gets to arbitration, or at least doesn't complete the process. I think Eric Landy's the one who said 6x6. And at first I was like, wow, that seems like a lot to me for a guy who was just on a couple of show me deals.
Mm-hmm.
But really, when you think about it, I mean, look at the history. Logan Couture, 6x5, I think. And Pavelski was 6x6.
They were both 6x6.
Yeah. So, I mean, yeah, it seems like that fit Doug Wilson's description of the kind of deals he does.
Yeah, plus you're buying UFA years too.
Right.
The one, like I said, the one kind of thing that I look at, and I mean, think about, before Couture signed that deal, he was almost an established star, and Pavelski was an established star at that time. And like I said, I don't want it to seem like I hate Hurdle. I love Hurdle. He was my favorite player. He was my favorite player to watch this year's playoffs. I mean, he just, every time he had the puck, you knew something awesome was going to happen. But at the same time, like, I would hate to sign this big deal, and he goes back to playing center and isn't as impactful as he was, or he, God forbid, he gets hurt again. And like I said, I don't think you should lowball him, but I think 6 years, $6 million a year, I think that's a healthy commitment that I'm not really ready for. It's not you, it's me.
I don't know. I mean, I feel like I don't mind the term, like 6 years. I don't mind the term. If you get him 6x5, I like it a little bit more, but if you're haggling over $1 million, I mean, see, 6x6 isn't terrible. I think anything over 6, then I kind of get a little queasy.
And we have to remember too that a lot of like big money deals are coming off the books, and the salary cap is going up as well.
Right. But how, again, that's always the other thing too, is like, we don't know what is going to happen after 2020.
Right.
Does it seem late to you that we haven't heard a cap figure yet? Or am I just thinking it should already be out?
I feel like they usually do the cap figures after, like right before the draft.
Oh, okay, like awards. They're like around awards.
Just so teams know what they need to play with, but at the same time,
they need to play with grit. That's what they need to play with.
Could you imagine like this? If there is another labor stoppage, and we, teams all of a sudden get gifted 2 more compliance buyouts again.
Dude, we are 2 years away from that happening. Why are they not going to the freaking bargaining table yesterday?
Because the NHL, that's because the law firm that the NHL uses,
the
same law firm they use for other sports, and that's they have a playbook, and it's
law firm of Batman and Daly.
No, it's Park Sour Rose.
Batman and only Batman.
Yes, Batman and Batman. No, it's Park Sour Rose is the law firm they use for the lockout. For not the lockout, but for labor negotiations, and that's their thing, man. They wait till the absolute last minute, lock them out, and sweat them out, and it's their playbook.
What other business would they get if they didn't have the NHL every 6 years too?
Well, I guess my understanding is they also negotiate on behalf of the NBA and NFL, I think.
Oh, wonderful.
So
who could forget replacement refs?
I don't know. I think we agree. Like Hurdle, you want to get the deal done. I think you want term there, especially because you want to get those UFA years at a lower number. You don't want him to like. You don't want to like have like stupid amount of money for you don't want to go lowball him for too long and then have him go UFA and then really have to pay him. Like if you can get a couple of those UFA years tied up at a decent number, I think you use the term to do that. What about Chris Tierney? Like where are you guys at with Chris Tierney? What number are you expecting there? I'll start with you, Mr. Jerko.
That's a curious. Yeah, I don't know what leverage that Chris Tierney has because, I mean, yeah, he had this amazing year in the regular season, and I don't think he was bad in playoffs, but statistically, he wasn't there. And he really, I'd say, diminished the last 10 games of the regular season even. I think it's a show me deal. I don't think you can go over $2 million for this guy, but only on a 1-year deal.
You cannot. I'm for a Chris Tierney extension. I'm looking at what Jonas Donskoy was given last year. 2 years, 1.9 per year. It's it's a good combination of here's a little bit, show me, but also some kind of long-term security to where you can take that first year to kind of establish yourself, and then that second year you can really swing for the fences. Cheryl says 2 years, $2 million. That honestly, that's as high as I go. I've seen some people saying that Chris Tierney is probably gonna get like 3.5 a year, and I'm like, whoa, like pause, yeah, like
and my thing of it is we were sitting here last year. Although we're all fans of Chris Tierney, aren't we all members of the Chris Tierney fan club?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Sure.
But we were sitting here last year at this time saying, does Chris Tierney get qualified as an RFA? And now when you're talking 3-point-something million per no.
I'm 100% with you there.
Yeah, I saw that 3.5 million. I nearly fell out of my seat. I was like, don't give him any ideas.
Send him a link of the video from a year ago where we're talking about will he get qualified. And for those of you looking at that video, make sure you hit the subscribe button so you can find all of it. No.
I was surprised he wasn't traded, I'll be honest.
I was really, I think with Chris Tierney this year, I think you look at you look at the quality of line mates obviously improved, and obviously his play improved with it. And I think that's an important thing. Like he had been basically tasked with just basically dragging carcasses up and down the ice for most of his career in San Jose.
Yep.
So it was nice to see the uptick with the with better line mates, but at the same time, and I love Chris Tierney, don't get me wrong, but Chris Tierney isn't this special snowflake. Chris Tierney's very replaceable. There's lots of Chris Tierneys in the league, in my opinion. And so, yeah, anything over 2 million is just stupid talk. I think with Chris Tierney, in my opinion, 2 years, 2 million, I'm fine with that. If 2 million's the AAV and you give him one something this year and then you give him a little bit more the next year, and if that doesn't work out, then see you later, Chris Tierney. Hopefully someone else is ready to step into that spot, because that's how the Sharks, if you look at the Sharks and how they seem to plan on going into the summer, I mean, I think it's universally agreed that the Sharks are going shopping this summer. They've got a little shopping list, they've got a wallet full of money, and they're going to go and try and find them some pretty new toys. If that's the case, I mean, if that's the case, then they're going to need to be able to, especially if there's long-term contracts, they're going to need to be able to backfill from the depth of this team. So signing Chris Tierney to anything over, especially if you're going to give him term, like anything over 2 at this point, that just seems silly to me, because I feel like by the time, you get 2, 3, 4 years down the road, is Chris Tierney going to move up into that upper echelon, or is he going to be a bottom 6 player his entire career? Because bottom 6 players in this league are a dime a dozen. Let's be honest here. I mean, I know we get attached to our own guys, and I like Chris Tierney, but you have to have cheaper options in that bottom six. And if that's where his ceiling is that six, is that bottom six, then you can't pay $3.5 million for that.
And the Sharks didn't draft Dylan Gambrell to be below Chris Tierney, honestly. I mean,
Agreed.
I guess maybe they did in terms of where they picked Gambrell in the draft and that he was an overage player. But really, if you're looking at Chris Tierney, say $3 million or 3 years or something like that, and Gambrell has a nice rookie year in the AHL, maybe a call up in the NHL, does well or whatever, and Tierney just kind of floats around, like, why wouldn't you just have Gambrell slide into Tierney's spot those second and third years, and now you're paying him $3 million plus to be what everyone bitches about Mikhail Bodker for?
That's a good point.
I mean, because same kind of money.
It's a solid point. Jerk.
I just think like with situations like this, you have to be, you being the general manager, you have to be careful because I saw Cheryl and Vince both said, like, you have a bunch of centers already in the organization. I mean, like we said, Latunov, Gambrell, Chartier, Blickfield. Correct me if I'm wrong. I believe Chikovic is a center.
The Sharks, that's all they have. If you're a forward, you can play center because they don't have to otherwise.
Exactly. And, you, Kevin, mentioned the show we did last summer where we said Chris Tierney, is he not going to be qualified? The two guys that we had replacing Tierney as the 4C are both gone. So
yeah, one's playing right now in a different game.
So it's like, like you said, Ian, I mean, dime a dozen. Like, if he wants to, get adventurous with his contract asks, I mean, it's, you have to, you can't get too attached. You got to realize, that you can find what the service they provide, you can find it elsewhere. You know what I mean?
Indeed.
But I'm more curious. And, we saw Tampa Bay at the deadline trade for Ryan McDonough. I almost wonder if the Sharks use a couple of these guys who had really good years and capitalize on that and try and find like another really good defenseman to play in your lineup, because, as good as Vlasic and Braun and, the third pair played, and I don't want to talk too much about, the Martin Ryan debate, but I mean, I feel like things in general in the series against Vegas would have been so much better if the Sharks just had another Vlasic-ish defenseman that they could, throw out there. You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah.
Actually,
go ahead, sir. Oh, I was gonna move on to DeMello, but if you have something else to say on Tierney.
Well, it's sort of in line. Okay. If you're looking at upgrading the defense, for example, bringing in a good defenseman or whatever, and then if we feel that the Sharks are so too deep on defense, you can trade a guy like DeMello or a guy like Tim Heed, package one of them with a forward and get an upgraded forward. It's not going to be a knockout superstar player unless you're trading Hurdle with DeMello, or something like that. But even adding to the defense, they can play. Doug Wilson can play around with the roster a bit to upgrade the forwards in that respect by trade. So
I think the root of everything we've said in the last 25 minutes is that there are a lot of things in play here.
Yeah.
A lot of moving parts. Yep.
Yeah. There's a lot of moving parts, which does make this a little bit difficult because obviously, we don't know what's going to happen at the draft. Obviously the Sharks are picking 21st. They could trade that pick. Also on the topic of the draft, though, I have started doing some profiles of players that the Sharks could potentially take 21st overall in the draft, and you can find that over on Teal Town USA. Today I did Rasmus Sandin, who is a defenseman that plays for my hometown Sioux Greyhounds. You can check that out, and I will be adding more as we go. But I mean, they could trade that pick at the draft. They could, there's so much going on. We don't know what's going to happen in free agency. We think we know the plan for free agency, but whether that comes to fruition or not, we don't know. I mean, that obviously there's a lot of moving parts that could change things drastically here. You know, and it's too early to start breaking down every possible scenario and trying to, you know, go at it. So, you know, we can do our best to kind of say, okay, restricted free agents generally come back, and, you know, kind of go from there. So the last one on our list is obviously Dylan DeMello. Dylan DeMello.
Robinson.
Yes.
Sorry, I'm bitter.
I'm bitter. Yeah, but yeah, Dylan DeMello. Dylan DeMello is kind of a, I don't want to say a controversial one, but it seems like, you know, there's some people that are really unhappy with Dylan DeMello, and some people are kind of indifferent. I'm sure someone out there loves Dylan DeMello. I find myself in the indifferent camp.
Would you say that Dylan DeMello is the John Cena of the San Jose Sharks, where some love him, some hate him?
He might be.
No, because Dylan DeMello's not playing the main event of the team.
That's fair.
That's also fair.
No, I really like Dylan DeMello as a person, and I really thought he had a very good playoff. Like, I thought he played his best hockey of his career in the playoffs. But I absolutely think he's expendable. Like, I would move him. He'd be a guy I would move in the offseason.
Yeah, and it's like what I said, you know, he is very replaceable. I mean, Tim Heed can play there. You could honestly, you could have Joakim Ryan and Paul Martin in the lineup. I don't think it has to be one or the other. And, you know, there's, you know, a lot of defensemen out there as well, 6th defenseman, 7th defenseman who could easily step in. And it's like I said, you know, why not capitalize on a good year and see if you can maximize your return?
Yeah, I don't know. Like, I feel like DeBoer is so set on his left and right shots, playing left and right shot, which is, you know, I think Joakim Ryan should be in this lineup next year. And if Paul Martin's even close to this roster, I'm probably going to blow a gasket. I'm not going to lie. I appreciate that he's under contract for another year, but I don't have to like it. DeMello, to me, he's a serviceable guy, you know, and KM, you know, kind of nails it. He's Matt Irwin. We've had so many of.
He's Matt Irwin, yeah.
He's Matt Tennyson. He's Matt Irwin. He's that guy that, you know, yeah. Is he a serviceable defenseman? Yes. You know, would I shed any tears if he was gone tomorrow? No. Like, he's a bottom pair defenseman. Like, you know, I don't think he's not going to get a ton of money. I don't think you sign him long term. But I don't know. I just I think he's steady with, with Dylan. He's pretty steady. I'll give him that. I think, you know, trying to put Dylan and Heed together, for an example, like, I know a lot of people were really upset that he didn't play more, but where was Heed going to play? You can't play him with Brent Burns. I don't think you could play him. I don't think he was overly fantastic with Brendan Dillon. And Justin Braun is still a guy.
Let's say, I think a problem was, we're talking about DeMello. Heed and DeMello were playing together, and now you got two undersized defensemen playing in the big man's conference. Didn't really work out that way, and the writing was all over the wall, PDB. Like,
yeah, like, I don't know. To me, like, don't get me wrong, like, everyone knows, like, my love for Tim Heed is there, but I just don't understand where Tim Heed was supposed to play in this lineup. Like, I understand why people were upset that he wasn't there, but I don't know where he was supposed to play.
Well, and, you know, not trying to be targeting or rude, but there are some people who refuse to admit that Brendan Dillon is a much better defenseman than he was 3 years ago.
That's true.
So I've seen many arguments saying, you know, Tim Heed could replace Brendan Dillon, which
yes, $3.2 million is going to just sit in the press box.
Yeah, and like I said, people, you know, again, not naming any names, but people are like, the Brendan Dillon hate train is just so long for whatever reason, and like, if you watch every year, like, he's gotten so much better, and he's talked about, he's worked on his skating, he's worked on his shot, he's worked on his awareness. We've seen it every training camp. I know Kevin has been there, I've been there, Drew's been there. We've all seen this.
Mm-hmm. This is why narratives are dangerous, though, because Brendan Dillon is the narrative. It's just something that's been said so many times that people just, if you're not paying attention and you're just looking for people like me or you or Kevin or other people who talk about this team as a profession or a hobby, you're looking, if that's what you're listening to. I'm not saying that everyone that does this thinks Brendan Dillon's terrible, but at the same time, it's like that's what happens. So a narrative gets set, and then it just becomes, it's hard for people to break that chain of thought.
Paging Mikkel Bodker. Paging.
Mikkel Bodker's still terrible. we have a question about Bodker later on. I don't know. Like I too agree with you completely, though. As far as Brendan Dillon goes, Brendan Dillon's game now from 3 years ago, significantly better. I don't think he's incredibly overpaid. I don't think, I'm fine with Brendan Dillon being on this roster. Does he still do some stupid things? Yes. There's a guy who does a lot more stupid things that makes a lot more money than him on our blue line, though.
Well, and that's what I'm saying is, like, you can do a Twitter search. Go back to my tweets from 3 years ago. Every time Dillon's blades touched the ice, I was like, oh crap, here we go. But every time this playoffs in the regular season, every time I saw that number 4 out there and it wasn't an 88 or a 7, I'm like, all right, we are set here. And I believe, and I could be speaking out of school here, but I believe Brendan Dillon also had a career year in points. Not that it really matters, but it's just another interesting piece to add.
And KM, bringing up a very good point. Dylan DeMello were like minus 23 in the last 8 games of the season. That's probably when people wanted heat in for DeMello. But again, I don't know if that fixes Dylan and heat. I just think would be, look, Dylan and Burns was a thing that Peter DeBoer went to for a while, and it was awful. I don't know why anyone would expect Heat to be significantly better than that pair, because as much as Heat isn't as adventurous as a certain Wookiee, they play a very, very similar game. So I don't know why people would expect Heat to be good with Dylan. I don't know. That's just my opinion.
Welcome to Teal Tinted Glasses, where we all hate your favorite players.
I hate all your players, guys. I hate them all. Just name them off in the chat. Cheryl brought up thoughts on Kevin Labanc right now. And I'm kind of like, I'm at a crossroads with Kevin Labanc right now, honestly. I wasn't super thrilled by him in the playoffs, but I look at, you look at the season point total. I mean, it's hard to be too upset about that. From a player who's still, and it's the guy who's still developing, right? Like, this isn't like, you're not, okay, hi, I'm in the NHL, I'm a finished product. Like, there's going to obviously still be growth for Kevin Labanc. I don't know what I think of Kevin Labanc long-term anymore. Like, I think next season's really going to be a big one for me watching Labanc.
What I will say about Kevin Labanc from this season versus last season was I don't want to speak for anyone, so I'll just say I was very much questioning Labanc's effort the second half of the season of the 16-17 season.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
This year, I thought he brought effort pretty much all year and in the playoffs. It was his decision making that was driving me batty. So you mentioned that he's young. There's still time to progress. I'm hoping his decision making gets better next year, and it'll be something else I'll be complaining about. Or hey, maybe nothing. Who knows? But Kevin Labanc. Right now he's not my favorite player, but at least it's for on ice stuff and not between the ears. So
that's fair.
Yeah. And I'm kind of with you where it's like, he had a really good regular season. I believe he had 40 points, which
40 points.
You can never complain about. However, like for all that was said about how great of a shot he had and how in junior he was just a total shooter that just lit it up. Like, he did a lot of passing this year.
He's the damn Craig Janney of the team. Like, shoot, Kyle Well-fed. Shoot the puck.
But that's the thing. I think that's like, he has a good shot, but his assist totals in junior were way higher than his goal totals.
That's also true. I mean, his last year in junior, he had 88 assists. So it's kind of like, can you really complain? I mean, yeah, he's feeding the puck to a guy who's just burying them, but at the same time, that's still an impressive amount of assists. And I think at the end of the day, like, if he's got 10 goals and, 1,000 assists, I mean, that means that 1,000 goals were scored, right?
Yeah, that's right.
But at the same time, with how much he is hesitant to shoot, and I really think his hesitancy has affected his game, and I don't think he needs to go to the Timo Meyer school of shooting, but just take a shot and see what happens.
I think he's going to have to figure it out.
Honest.
That's fair. Like, I think I think that would be my only real gripe with him. I'm still, like, again, he had a great season. His playoff may have left a little something to be desired, but there's a few players who, I can say that about, that are a little more tenured in this league.
Yep.
To be completely honest, like Kevin Labanc, like I know Cheryl said in the chat, like, this isn't a development league. For Kevin Labanc, it is. He's, if you throw him on waivers, someone is going to scoop him up fast. Like, it's not even funny. So he's going to have to, he's going to figure it out. I'm not too worried about Kevin Labanc yet. I think, did he have the playoff I wanted him to have? No. But I think that it's hard because I think this team needs more guys that can shoot the puck. We have a lot of distributors. We need some shooters.
Yeah.
And I think that's what makes Kevin Labanc so frustrating. And it's not his fault per se. It's just the fact that, we see him score goals in bunches and then we want him to be like that all the time.
Here's a question. Go ahead, Hockey Jerk.
I just want to say he's also only 22.
Yeah.
Right. And he's, like I said, he's still growing. He's growing.
I'm going to spin two questions that came into the chat here. Rob Iman asked, could Balcers replace or move ahead of Labanc in the depth chart next year? Puck Guy asked, does Balcers World Championships make him a lock for the roster next year? So here's my question based off those two.
Okay. Does
Rudolph Balcers make the team or get put on the team in an effort to push Labanc to the next level? Like, if Balcers is on the team, should Labanc feel that little nudge maybe he needs to get to put up more offense?
It's the whole working parts thing, right? Like, there's so many moving parts. What if what do the Sharks do in the summer? Like, if the Sharks don't buy anything in the summer, let's say they completely strike out in free agency, and then I don't even know what team this is at that point. But I think at that point, then maybe, you bring up a guy and that could be, a big warning sign for Kevin Labanc. I'd be
more worried if I was Donskoy for me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm with you there, Kevin. The Sharks probably could have scratched Donskoy for the whole second round and would have still ended in 6 games.
He was hurt too, though. I don't know. Again, like, it's hard to. But I mean, I feel like with Donskoy, that's becoming a recurring theme too.
It's that, and I feel like even when he's healthy, I just feel like there's just, he busts a move in the shootout, and he's really good at behind the back passes. But I mean, okay, his breakout year was 10 goals, which he got mostly in the first half of the season. I mean, it's not really anything exciting, at least in my eyes.
I think too, it needs to be said that there's a lot. I like Rudolph Balcers. I don't want to say I don't like him, but I feel like I am just not on the same level of excitement with this kid as a lot of other people are.
Yeah.
Like, people talk about, like, I don't know why you would even put Balcers on the roster next year, in my opinion. Like, I'm not there. I'm not like, this guy should be in the NHL next year. I'm not there at all.
Yeah. I still have him on my CUDA depth chart. I still have him as my right wing 1. I'd really like to see him start. I'd really like to see him start the year in the AHL and show that he can play back-to-back great years in the AHL, and then, I mean, that doesn't hurt him.
No, and that's kind of my thoughts too. Like, I know we want to, you know, I like it. I like that people are excited about prospects in the Shark system, and like I said, maybe I'm in the minority. But I don't feel like this is a thing. Like, this should be a thing next year.
I just think that there's more pertinent things that need to be addressed in terms of the Sharks lineup, where it's like, okay, maybe 2019, 2020 is where Balcers gets his chance, but like, I'm with you, Kevin. I want to see him start the year in the AHL. I want to see him have, you know, from day one to day whatever, how many days. I want him to have a really good season the whole time, because that was one of the things we talked about at the beginning of the year. It's, you know, I even said it. I thought Balcers was going to be netting goals from day one and he really only had a bunch of assists, and it wasn't until right before the All-Star break where he kind of turned things around. So I want to see, like, if we can get second half Balcers for the whole year next year, then you have me sold.
Right.
Yeah. Agreed. No, and I agree. And I think that, and again, I don't think that there's this wide open spots on the team next year. Even if, let's say, the team stands pat, I don't see that being what am I trying to say? I don't think that there's this wide open spot where a guy like Balcers can slide right in. You know, Cam in the chat, like Sorensen, Gaudreau, Carlson, Gambrell, Balcers, they're competing for basically 3 spots, maybe less, depending on what they do this summer.
That's like, can we talk about Marcus Sorensen?
Absolutely.
I mean, he had a really good playoffs, but are we sold? Like, should he be on the second line with Couture and Hurdle, or is he going to have to go through the paces again next September?
There's another guy where I want to see it all year.
Yeah, I want to see him go through the paces. Like, I think he absolutely should be on the roster next year, in the lineup next year. But where in the lineup? I want him to prove himself some more.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, you know, as a joke, I say regular season doesn't matter, but I think Marcus Sorensen takes it like very seriously. Like, the playoff series against Edmonton last year, like, he was probably the best player. And then this year, he was probably the best player of the Anaheim series, you know, and even in the Vegas series, he only had 1 goal. But again, there were many instances where late in the game and the Sharks were down, Sorensen's forechecking. Sorensen is trying to get something going. And you like to see that work ethic, and you like to see that, you know, determination. But again, like you said, Ian, you want to see it all year. So I think, you know, if you're looking at kind of like I don't know if psychosomatic is the right word, but just kind of like instilling some confidence, why not start the preseason with Hurdle and Couture and Sorensen as your top line, and, you know, see where he goes. Throw him in the proverbial deep end, if you will.
Yeah, absolutely. Just go. I'm trying to stay in the chat here quick. Jeremy Waugh. I mean, Jeremy Waugh is still a project. You know, he had a couple of weeks of really, really good hockey and then got hurt again.
Yeah.
He's going to need a hell of a lot more than less to even get a sniff of the NHL roster. The Sharks NHL defense is pretty set right now. You still have Heat next year. You have DeMello. Like, I don't see anybody. Paul Martin maybe gets bought out this summer, but then you're still set on defense. Like, I don't. The Sharks defense pipeline is scary, but it's kind of fortunate that unless this gets completely ravaged by injuries, this decor is fine where it is right now.
Yeah, and even if Paul Martin does get bought out, I'm pretty sure the Sharks will sign a defenseman in the offseason. May not be a top flight defenseman, but somebody.
See, and I've always been very much against, like, buy out Martin, trade Martin. Like, I just never got into that narrative, just because it's like, you know, it's not like he's the worst player ever. I mean, he still has some value, but, you know, you messing around with the buyout calculator, and I'm just saying, if the Sharks were to go that route, not saying they should or would or could, but it'd be a pretty cheap buyout.
Why wouldn't you at this point, though? I don't like. I just think it's simple math. Like you spend $2 million this season and next season to buy him out. Joakim Ryan can play in that spot. It's proven. I don't know why you keep Paul Martin around for Peter DeBoer to play over Joakim Ryan at this point. Like, that's just a coaching abomination at this point, to me. To even give Peter DeBoer the option to play Paul Martin over Joakim Ryan at this point.
Well, and I think too, it's where we'll see similar to the Adam Burrish situation, where there was a disconnect between Doug Wilson and Todd McCollum there, where it ended up with Adam Burrish getting waived. But just to quickly give you and the fans some insight here,
okay,
a Paul Martin buyout. Let's say they buy him out, so he's at his cap hit is $485 for next year, which I think for next year I think you can stomach that. However, some might disagree, and that's fine. So say you buy him out next year, it's a cap hit of just a hair under 2.02, and then the following year it's almost 1.5 million cap hit. So like I said, it's absolutely doable, and like you said, why not?
Yeah, I don't understand why you would give Peter DeBoer the option to play Paul Martin over Joakim Ryan at this point in his career. Like that's just, I mean, yeah, that's my opinion. I'm not trying to bully you off the show. I don't understand why you would keep him around. Like, he's so, you're right. He's not the worst defenseman. He's not the worst guy to play. Like, he's not terrible, but at the same time, the Sharks have a more inexpensive option that needs the time.
Yeah, exactly. And like I said, it's one of the cruel realities of being a sports fan, is like you get attached to the person, but you kind of have to look at the player. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, it's a business still, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Gosh, we went really long on this.
I was going to say, we've gone an hour and we haven't even gotten to the NHL playoffs.
What happened?
This is the Shark Show for you.
Yeah,
this is the Shark Show for you.
Let's talk about. I want to talk about Nashville quickly before it's like not even topical anymore. Like, these series will probably still be going the next time we record, so we can always like come back and talk about these series. But the Nashville Jets Game 7, I want to talk about that while it's still remotely topical, because I don't want to be like 2 weeks down there and be like, hey, what about Pekka Rinne? And then people are like, what? Why are we talking about? What's wrong with you people? Why are you talking about this crap? Okay, and maybe they're doing that right now, and that's fine too. But you know what? It's just, I want to talk about it because I saw so many Pekka Rinne getting pulled in the Game 7 early in the game. There was like some really polarizing like talk on it. Like, a lot of people were really for the move, like obviously based on the fact that Pekka Rinne had been pulled in like something stupid of, a stupid number of games he'd already been pulled in the playoffs. What the hell? So where are you guys on this first? I think that's my first question. Were you guys pro pulling Pekka Rinne, or were you anti pulling Pekka Rinne? I'll start with Mr. Kevin Lacey.
I think that, oh man, I'm trying not to cop out on this, because I feel what I really just want to say is the politically correct version, which is, well, you can't blame UC Saros came in and he did fine, so obviously it was the right move. Sure, he gave up a couple of goals, but by then the game was out of hand and blah 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 blah. So like, in that respect, I'm like, I don't know. I feel like they pay Pekka Rinne all that money to pull through in Game 7, and to have a goals against average of, I think it's 4.41 career, or 4.14, something like that, career in Game 7s. Holy moly. Like, I could not believe that. But at the same time, I can, because, I mean, Pekka Rinne, and really Nashville's entire franchise history has had their goalies can't pull through in the big moment. So, man, I don't know. I think it was the right move in the sense that they needed to make a change, but oh man, just that's disappointing. Disappointing.
El Jerkador.
If you look at Game 7 by itself, then a little questionable pulling him, especially that early and only 2 goals. But like Kevin said, look at it from a perspective of all the Game 7s he's played in, and look at it from from those playoffs. I could be wrong. Again, I've been wrong many times before, but I think every game of that series that Nashville lost, except for one, Rene was pulled.
He was pulled, yeah.
Right. And, like you said, this is your big money, big ticket guy who's supposed to, get it done for you in the big game. And it sucks because he had a really good regular season and a really good, and a really good first round against a Colorado team that I think, provided more punch than we all expected. But, you have UC Saros, you have him in the wings. And, I believe next year is Rene's last year on his current deal.
Yeah.
Maybe you have to start exploring, the next phase of your franchise's plan. Like maybe Rene plays out his deal as the starter, but then I don't think you can keep your wagon attached to him for much longer afterwards. I mean, he's not ancient, but, he's not getting any younger either. And for a career history of, not getting it done in the big game, I mean, it's not helpful for your reputation.
Yeah, and Ian, to further answer your question, I don't think the Predators make this move if they don't have the best backup in the goalie in the league in UC Saros on their bench. Like, I think if it's Andre Pavelek on their bench, Rene's playing that game until it's 6-1. Like, and even I was listening to the Winnipeg broadcast on my way home from work when that happened, and they even said Pekka Rene's pulled from the game for now. Really wouldn't be surprised if we see him back in there after the next TV timeout. And I was like, that's what I thought. Very interesting point. Now, it didn't happen that way, but yeah.
Like I
Ian,
thought.
What's your thoughts?
Before you go in, okay. I just want to say, like I thought the same thing, Kevin. Like I thought they were going to yank him, just get him to relax, and then focus in there. Yeah. Because we've seen that before. I think we saw that this season with Jones. I could be wrong, but I think we saw that with Jones.
I think that the thing that upset me the most about this was there was no Finnish goalie freakout. Like, he was the most depressed looking human being going off the ice that I've ever seen. There was no broken sticks. There was no, like we've seen Pekka Rinne completely fall apart and for our own entertainment, breaking sticks. But no, here's the thing. Like, there is a part of me that wishes that Nashville would have went on to win that game just so I could satisfy my curiosity of who's starting game 1 in the conference finals.
Yeah.
Like, there's a part of me that really wanted to see that. Just
You're right. We haven't had that yet this year.
Right. And I don't know what happens in the off season, but to me, like, I don't know how they go back to. I don't know how they can start next year with Pekka Rinne as their starter now, because you've basically, to pull him at that point. I mean, I don't know how you can give him back the net. I understand he's a Vezina finalist, but at the same time, like, regular seasons are great. Sharks fans can tell you regular seasons are great, but winning in the playoffs is what matters.
There's only one way it happens, because I'm on board with you. I think Pekka Rinne's career in Nashville is done.
Yeah.
There's one way it happens. They don't move him and they keep him on the bench for most of the year, and then they, what's the phrase? Cam Ward this bitch, but in the opposite way, where it's like it's Cam Ward's net until halfway through the playoffs, and then Martin Gerber comes in, wins a round and a half, and then Cam Ward comes back and finishes out the rest. Like, Pekka Rinne may be that mid-playoff savior next year for the Predators.
Could be. I don't know. I mean, at $7 million though, I mean, can you really afford to sit him on the bench all that time?
No, and all the money they spent on that defense.
like if you're, I mean, this is a totally like new kind of transition, but
Sure.
like if you're the Islanders, how do you not at least sniff around that situation?
Islanders.
Great call. Great call.
You know, Gen X, during the game, we were talking on Twitter, and he brought up Vancouver as another place where he would make a lot of sense. So if you think about it, I don't think they're completely ready to hand over the net to a guy like Thatcher Demko.
No, he's going to have to steal it.
They're not a contender next year. They're not like, I don't think Vancouver's a true contender. So you can't go wrong with having a guy like Pekka Rinne there to just be a stopgap until the Demko show starts.
Pekka Rinne for Jonathan Dolan. Damn it! Another forward to Nashville.
No.
Why?
But I think, you know, but that's another place there. And I think you're going to see kind of a similar situation in Philly where they're just going to wait for Carter Hart at this point, I think. So you're going to see a bunch of stopgap guys that are going to be there hoping that, you know, that Carter Hart can turn his junior play into a solid NHL career.
So I have a friend who's a Philadelphia Flyers fan, and he's very much on the Alex Lyon train. I'll be honest, I know very little about him. Is there anything you guys know about Alex Lyon?
I really like Alex Lyon, and we should mention really quickly, he had a 94 save win or 93 save win in a 5 overtime game.
Right.
Earlier in the week against, or last week against the Charlotte Checkers. So bravo, Alex. That was fantastic. I really think Philly should be going the route of Carter Hart as the starter with Alex Lyon as the backup. So there's the best of both of your worlds right there. Because I think that duo would be fantastic.
Yeah. And lest we forget about Stolarz as well.
Stolarz has no hips left, though.
Also true.
Philly, I mean, Philly is like, I know a lot of people in Philly are really frustrated waiting for this team to actualize, but there's so many, and this has been the case for a while. They have so many pieces, especially from the blue line back, that when this team actualizes, if it ever does, and we've seen teams that have promised and never actualized, but if the Flyers can actually, actualize, that they're going to be a dangerous team. They're going to be a dominant team in the Eastern Conference. Within 3 years, I think they could be one of the top teams in the Eastern Conference.
Just for them, hopefully Claude Giroux and Wayne Simmons haven't burned out by that time, though.
Yeah. So I don't know. Go ahead.
Well, and you know what? I very much am of that same school of thought. Like, their forward depth is actually pretty good. Like, I would not complain about having the forward depth that they have, but the goaltending is obvious. Brian Elliott, no words needed to even be said about him.
No.
And like you said, they've got 12,000 goalie prospects, which literally one of them sticks and you're set.
Yeah.
And then
they traded Felix Sandstrom, or no, they didn't trade. Who the heck did they trade? Didn't they trade Felix Sandstrom? I don't know.
I don't remember.
They also have Peter Mrazek, who's going to be a restricted free agent. I thought he should have got more time in the net. But if I'm zeroing in on something, I think you need to definitely give that back end a massive overhaul. I mean, keep Gostisbehere, keep Provorov, but honestly, like, Gudez, Manning.
I like Sandhut.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm talking about guys who were in the NHL this year.
Oh, okay.
Like Gudez, Manning, Oduya for like a cup of coffee.
Right.
McDonald, I know his contract is dicey, but him too. Like, if their defense is like, even if they got like a third quality defenseman to kind of be in that same conversation as Gostisbehere and Provorov, I think that team has a totally different outcome against the Penguins.
Yeah, I think that's incredibly fair. So I
like how we went from Stanley Cup playoffs to Philadelphia Flyers talk.
I know those two things should never be in a sentence together.
Until 3 years when
it was Rene. That's right. Yeah, Rene. I liked her Rene to Islanders.
I went to Rene Islanders. Yeah, I don't.
Yes.
Just kind of putting a bow on this, like, to me, like, it wouldn't shock me to see the Predators try and get out from under, because I feel like, yeah, Pekka Rinne is a good goalie. He's a Vezina nominated goalie, but at the same time, like, it has to be said, when the chips have been down and the big games have been played, Pekka Rinne hasn't been there. And this is a team with legitimate Stanley Cup aspirations. How many more times are you going to let this be your undoing? Yep. But as UC Saros, is UC Saros the guy? I don't know. There was a pretty big hole for him to dig out of in that game 7 on a team that was just firing on all cylinders. So I don't know if, you don't want to judge him, say, oh, well, UC Saros couldn't save the day either, so maybe he's not the guy. But I just feel like with Pekka Rinne, you have an established history now where you have to, if you're with Stanley Cup aspirations, can you really roll the dice on this guy one more time for one more season? Like, we've seen that windows don't stay open forever. And now Nashville is a very good team with, that's not going to be broken apart anytime soon. But at the same time, you only get so many kicks at the can. And it's not, it's not easy to win, obviously. Otherwise, we'd have the Stanley Cup all the damn time. Damn it.
Yeah, well, yep. The Sharks would have a Stanley Cup every year if they just wanted it more.
But if they just wanted it more. Just a little bit more than the other team. So the conference final, Jets and Golden Knights are tied at 1 game apiece right now. I think this series has been fun to watch. I'm liking this series. I think I like it a little more than the East final, to be completely honest. But I mean, they've both been pretty good. What are your guys' early thoughts so far as we're 2 games into the Western Conference final?
All I'll say is anybody but Vegas.
All right.
Well, and actually, I do want to say one more thing. I'm sorry. Again, I'm gonna pat myself on the back here. I said that the Jets would be a good team this year if they got good goaltending, and they've gotten good goaltending. So you're welcome, world.
But don't tell them why they got good goaltending, because Drew might.
I'm not even saying his name.
Okay, good. Kevin.
I think that the Golden Knights tonight learned from Tampa Bay last night, because both series started off with the Caps and the Jets just blazing out of the gate.
Yep.
And neither the Knights nor the Lightning knew what the hell hit them. And last night, the same thing happened to the Lightning. And the Lightning took the lead back, but ultimately they got worn down and then deflated and gave up by the time that game was over. And it all started again from a Capitals quick start, 28 seconds in. So I think that the Knights looked at that. I think one of the points Gallant probably said to the team before the game was, all right, don't let it happen again, because look what just happened to Tampa twice. Tampa should have come out flying for game 2 after getting destroyed in game 1, and it didn't happen. You guys really, talk is cheap. You got to go out and play your asses off. And the Knights did that tonight in game 2. So
I just want to watch the guy fight a fighter jet. That's what I want to see.
The entertainment before the game.
I just want to see an F-18 and the night fight. That's all.
He's gonna fight like the Top Gun guy or something.
Oh, that'd be amazing. All right, Eastern Conference Final. I've actually been really intrigued, because I honestly thought that I didn't think, but my concern was for Washington was that they slayed the dragon. And, sometimes it's hard to get back up to that level of intensity after you've beaten such a foe that, and let's be honest, the Penguins have had their way with the Capitals so long. Just so long. And to get through that and finally slay the dragon, you always get concerned that is there going to be enough intensity for that next round? And obviously, Washington has answered that question with a resounding, hell yeah, we do. I'm surprised, honestly. I thought that, and again, we watched Columbus go up 2-0 and then lose the series. So I'm not saying Washington's won anything yet, but I was kind of surprised. I thought that I thought Tampa would put up a better fight, especially at home.
I really think that Washington is riding the emotional high of slaying the Pittsburgh Penguins. I mean, especially with the way it went down. I mean, in overtime in Pittsburgh. I mean, adrenaline and emotions and all that stuff is through the roof. And I think too that the removal of that President's Trophy pressure has also helped them. I mean, they're no longer for the last 2 or 3 years, it's always been, Capitals are the team to beat out of the East. And now this year, a lot of teams are looking at Penguins. A lot of teams are looking at Tampa Bay and Columbus. And, you have the Capitals, despite, I believe they won their division this year, but even with that, they flew under the radar. I mean, handled the Blue Jackets after slipping a little bit, and then they slayed the Penguins. And, I was rooting against the Capitals, but now that they are in the third round, I want to see what they can do in this uncharted territory. And even though I think Tampa Bay is the better team of the 4 remaining teams, I still think if Washington can handle Tampa Bay, then it's probably their best chance at the Stanley Cup, because the emotions that they'll be riding on, it's going to put their confidence through the roof.
Yeah. I there's only one minor thing I have a problem with, and that's I don't know how to respond if Sharks East wins before Sharks West. I don't know if I can deal. Because, I mean, really, like, if there's been a team that has kind of had the Sharks script, that's not the Sharks, it's been the Washington Capitals. And I don't know. It might bother me more than I think it should. And I've been really cool with this playoff so far.
Yeah, I was going to say, I don't really know if anything has really boiled my blood this year in the playoffs.
Right, and I wonder if this will do it worse than another team winning that shall remain nameless. I don't know. But I don't know. I'm curious to see. I mean, like, I really, I really like Ovechkin as a player. Seeing Ovechkin raise the cup wouldn't be the worst thing ever. In my opinion.
No.
You're talking to the guy with the Ovechkin jersey in the background. I think I'm in agreement.
Okay, fair enough. I had a couple questions, and then we should probably get it here because I know we're probably running super, super long.
Which we are.
Thank
you for sticking with us, folks.
Yeah.
In fact, our viewership went up over this.
Wow, that's amazing. Do you guys I just want to do some quick hits, and you guys can like just rapid fire answers here. Don Waddell is the new GM of the Carolina Hurricanes. Rob Brindamore is the head coach. This is my quick hit on the Carolina situation. Nothing says old boys club more than my team never won a playoff game and went to the playoffs once than that guy responsible for that being named the GM of another team.
All I'll say is enjoy living paycheck to paycheck.
Kevin, anything on that? Yeah, I have lost Kevin.
I think the
he's lagging.
I think the Russian hackers saw his Ovechkin jersey and they got him.
Kyle Dubas is the new GM of the Leafs. I'm curious to see the fallout there with Mark Hunter, who was not named GM of the Leafs. Other than that, I think this was pretty much, I thought, was always going to be just a given.
I'm curious to see what Austin Matthews' facial hair looks like now that Lou Lamoriello is gone. I mean, he's definitely not part of the old boy club. That's for sure. And, we've seen getting a young set of eyes, on a team. I mean, we saw it with John Chaika in the desert. And, it seems like Dubas has been the quote unquote heir apparent for the last little while. And, eventually you gotta transition into, younger front office staff who've got, a mind that's built around the current NHL. I've said it many times before. We have all these guys who played in the 90s and the 2000s who are trying to coach the 2010s game,
Yeah, I think, and
you know about Barry Melrose?
Vince G in the chat, just quick. Young analytics guys are the new trend. But here's the thing with Kyle Dubas. Like Kyle Dubas, yeah, he's an analytics guy, but he's also like you know, a lot of people like say he's not a traditional hockey guy, but this is a guy who was an agent. He was also the GM in junior. You know, I don't like when people say he's not a hockey guy because of his age. Like he's done the work on the hockey guy side. He's done all the hockey guy things to be a GM. However, what I am looking forward to seeing if Arizona can get Austin Matthews for a Charmander. That's what I want to know.
This just in: John Chaika has offered a chocolate snack pack in exchange for in exchange for a piece of string cheese.
I do think that the Kyle Dubas thing was going to happen. Like I felt like the writing's been on the wall pretty much since he became a part of the team. My thing is just, can we go 2 weeks without hearing about the freaking Maple Leafs?
No.
Like, good Lord, let some other teams get some. Let Winnipeg have some spotlight once, because the U.S. telecast certainly isn't going to give it. Canada's got to take it too. Toronto's got to take it too for Canada.
The center of the hockey universe, man. It never changes. Like it's always like, as someone who lives here and as someone who, you know, ingests plenty of Canadian hockey media, somehow everything always goes that's just the way it is.
James Reimer might be rumored to be coming back to the Maple Leafs by training camp. Let's have a whole show about it. Golly, like, no more Maple Leafs.
Yeah, no.
Until they make a trade with the Sharks.
It is what it is, unfortunately. Okay, so getting to the questions now that we do you want to talk about the Michael Kempny thing, Dirk, quick?
I mean, I just think it's interesting. Michael Kempny gets fined the max for cross-checking Cedric Paquette in the face, which is the same play that got Josh Morrissey and Evander Kane suspended, and is the same play that got Shea Theodore a 2-minute penalty. So think about that.
I guess my only thing is, when I was listening to the 31 Thoughts podcast with Merrick and Friedman, they had Brian Burke on, who we know was the former he was the former guy that handed out the discipline. And he said something very interesting. Like he wouldn't say like there was like an official, this is how many games is worth what in each round, but he said that the longer you went into the playoffs, the more games a suspension was worth. And I don't know if that's what was at play here. Where I'm not saying I agree with it. I'm not saying that's the way that things should be done. I'm just wondering if, because it's a third round game, like they did, you know, where in their mind that, you know, one game's worth 3 or 4. You know, and they just didn't see it as a 3 or 4 game suspendable cross check, which I think is stupid. But yeah. I wonder if that's what's at play.
Like, well, if that's the case, I mean, why not just wait until the Stanley Cup final to start throwing elbows? You know what I mean? Like,
I think you should kill people.
That's what I'm saying. Like, how soon? Like, you know, is somebody gonna like tuck a knife in their pads or something? I mean, like it shouldn't matter.
Your pads is just eviscerated.
Round, but in the Cup Finals, it's a $5,000 fine.
Like, I don't care. Like, it doesn't matter if it's Game 7 of the freaking, you know, English.
Holtby is just hit Mark Scheifele in the middle of the ice.
Yeah, like it shouldn't matter. Like, the NHL talks about wanting, you know, the players to be safe and eliminating dirty plays. I mean, same thing. Yeah. You know, Nikita Kucherov kicked Brett Connolly. Nobody even batted an eye at it.
That was bad too.
Yeah. No, I don't disagree. I don't know what I was trying to do. Devil's advocate, something stupid. I don't know.
What's the saying about it? If you do the crime, you got to do the time, something like that.
Right.
Yeah.
I think there's asterisks there that have, like, you know, but no, I'm not going to.
But Ian, you're right though, folks. If you want some good listening, go. Unfortunately don't remember the day, but it's on Hockey Central at noon. Brian Burke and Doug McLean.
Oh, it was good too, yeah.
God, that was a good show.
Yep. All right. Okay, so I have a question from Mike, and I also have a question from Zeke. So we'll decompress these as quickly as we can, because we went really long, and then we will go home to our beds or whatever. I guess we are home because we're podcasting, but whatever.
I'm live from SAP Center during the renovations.
Yeah. If the Sharks are unable to re-sign Kane, What direction do you see them going, and how much of an impact will it have on the team's future? Again, a lot of moving parts here. It's interesting because they have to do something. Like they can't. I don't think they can stand pat and just let the kids do it. If you don't re-sign Evander Kane, then you have to bring someone else in my opinion, because if you look at this roster, where is your 40 goal scorer on this roster that isn't already a 40 goal scorer? I don't see one.
Chris Tierney at $3.5 million, obviously.
We're back to that again.
Oh, it's amazing how these things come full circle.
Well, and like how many years has JVR been linked to the Sharks? I mean, he's definitely a good fallback option.
Yeah, I could see a JVR. I mean, the injury history with JVR would concern me, but I really think that the Sharks can't afford to stand pat. I think that now obviously Kane on locker agreement was really non-committal what he's going to do. He's going to go to the open market. And, we'll see what happens. I don't want the Sharks to super overpay Evander Kane either, though, because, again, you want to be able to have room to bring in pieces to be competitive. I do want Evander Kane back, but there's definitely a price point where I'm no longer interested.
See, he was pretty non-committal at locker cleanout, but, after Game 6, what he said made me think that he is committal, if that's even a word, is...
Committed.
He's committed. There you go. He essentially said that he, came to the Sharks because, it was a good chance for him to win, and he's committed to the group of guys. He said that. He said he believes in the group of guys, and to me, that sounds like somebody who wants to stick around. But again, words only mean so much.
Right. I mean, if a team because look at the Sharks aren't the only team that's going to have money this summer. And you have to wonder, if I'm Evander Kane,
Sharks get everybody.
If I'm Evander Kane, I probably want to stay in a low key market. But if let's say, guy's a Vancouver guy, Vancouver Canucks throw a truck of money in front of him, it's got to be tempting.
Yep.
It's the age-old question that I find myself talking about. It's okay. Do you want to win a Stanley Cup, or do you want to play somewhere that, you have a connection to? I mean, it's what I said about John Tavares and the Sedins and Shane Doan. It's I get it. You're committed to where you're playing, but you got to have aspirations at some point. And, even though Kane is from Vancouver, it's I don't know why he would sign there.
Why he would go into that kind of market again. I agree. I'm not disagreeing. I can't, but money's a hell of a drug.
Oh, absolutely.
Again, I don't know. I mean, I think though, if the Sharks, obviously look at the Sharks, I absolutely 100% believe that goal number one is John Tavares for them. I'm not saying they're going to get John Tavares, but
it should be everybody's goal this off season should be to sign John Tavares on day one, and not day one-ish, on day one.
Right. And I'm just, but I mean, I think that's the plan, and I think it goes down. But I think, and again, I don't want to get too much into the wheels because there's so many endless possibilities of what could and couldn't happen come free agency. But I think the Sharks have to do something. I don't think that, if they completely strike out in free agency, this team's in trouble next year. I don't care if Thornton's back. This team is in trouble if they cannot, if they completely strike out in free agency, because I feel like that's the plan, and I don't know what plan B is for Doug Wilson.
Yep.
So I if they don't, what does it mean for the future of the franchise? They could be, they could be more of what we saw this year. I think the Sharks kind of played a little over their heads this year for stretches. They got good performances from good people, but when you look at when we brought Evander Kane in, I mean, this team was in a tailspin.
Oh yeah.
Before Evander Kane got here, I still believe.
Well, remember what I was saying.
Yeah.
When we got the Sharks, I was saying, what the hell are they doing? Kane's not going to save the team. He kind of did.
He kind of did.
But
I don't know if the Sharks get to the playoffs without him.
Yeah. Oh, they don't. They don't get to the playoffs without him.
I don't know. Okay. Next question. Bodker had a good second half, good playoffs. His deal pays him $3 million in real dollars next season, although his cap hit is $4 million. Sharks probably want cap space. What do you think you could get for him if you decided to move?
A late round draft pick or a restricted free agent that a team is probably not going to qualify.
I think the Sharks could get a 3rd round pick for him. But I'm also not of the belief that the Sharks have to move Bodker.
I don't think they have to. I think it's something that would be worth exploring. But to me, yeah, maybe you get a 3rd, but I think you get anything of value, you're retaining salary, no? And then kind of what's the point? If you buy out Martin and then let's say you keep half of Bodker's cap hit.
I just feel like if you keep half Bodker's cap hit, you might as well just keep the whole thing.
That's exactly what I believe as well. Like,
oh, okay.
Like, I don't see the point. If you're going to retain, because I don't think anyone's going to want Bodker unless you need a team that desperately needs to hit the floor. And those teams still exist. But I don't know.
I'm fine with Bodker being on the team.
Yeah, I'm, and that's kind of where I am too. Like the second half of the year, he was pretty damn good. Not amazing, but for what Mikhail Bodker's supposed to be, we saw what he was supposed to be in the second half of the season. And if you can get that from him, then you know what? I eat the rest of the deal and just, because again, depending on what happens in the offseason, what are the Sharks going to have options for scoring next year? And I'm not saying that Bodker should be counted on for any amount of goals, but
another point I brought up earlier in the season is Bodker's had his best use when he's been the guy on a bad team,
right?
But he's been, so who knows?
I don't think you have to get rid of him. Like, I don't think he has to go. It's a must. Like, I think Paul Martin getting bought out is a must. Mikhail Bodker being on this team, I'm indifferent to it.
Well, and like you said, if you're trading him, yes, you're eating salary, but depending on who you're trading him to, you may have to, if there's a team who really wants to play hardball, you may have to throw in an extra asset just to convince the team to take him on.
And that's how you end up with Vegas. You give extra assets, you trip over your own genitals, and that's how you end up as Vegas.
Hey, maybe that's why the Barracuda have 20 forwards listed for their roster next year, because it's going to be Bodker and 4 AHL forwards for a pick.
You know what the worst part is? What's the worst thing that can happen though? If let's say Bodker doesn't trade. What's the worst thing that can happen? He sits in Hansen's vacated doghouse.
Yeah,
big deal. I don't think the money is that prohibitive that you need to move it. I think if the Sharks do end up in a little bit of a cap pinch, Bodker 80-point player in Vegas next year. That would be our luck. I think that, worst case, unless it's super prohibited to keep him around, depending on what they do this summer, especially in free agency, I don't think you have to. I think you could probably get a little bit of value for him, but nothing significant. I think if you're doing it to try and dump cap. And generally, when you dump cap, you're giving up things you don't want to give up to dump cap, and you're eating probably salary a little bit. So I don't know. I don't know.
Let's wrap it up.
Yeah, we're way too long here. I'm just like, I don't even know why anyone's still watching at this point. Jerk, any final thoughts on that?
Keep watching. Thank you.
They very obviously like the marathon show on a Monday evening. Of course, who wouldn't?
Oh, it's awesome.
It is awesome. Where we discuss Mikhail Bodker and long walks on the beach.
Of course, and you know what? I don't want to get in.
Bodker guy. I mean, you need to get in on this.
Now, I said it last summer. I said it. There's no reason to believe that Bodker can't have a bounce back year. And you know what? He didn't hit 20 like I thought he would, but he had a much better year. And he
didn't bounce back, but he clawed back.
Yeah, exactly. And I'm of the same belief. There's no reason to think that he can't come in and have another good year. I mean, he's in my estimate, or in my eyes, he's shirked the lack of effort kind of viewpoint that a lot of people have had on him, and he hasn't been the most consistent guy, but he's been very explosive, where he'll get you some goals when you need them, which is evidenced by the fact that I have to buy a frickin' Mikkel Bodker jersey for him scoring 4 games in a row. But you know what? That's beside the point, because I'm going to do it eventually. But you just got to stay the course with him. I mean, why would you buy him out? Like, it's still a salvageable project, even if you consider him damaged goods. You know what I mean? Like, it's definitely something you can salvage. And the chemistry he's developed with Chris Tierney too. Like, how is that not something that you explore going into next year?
Yeah,
Yep.
yeah, I don't disagree.
Ian, you've mentioned about if the Sharks strike out in free agent. If the Sharks strike out in free agency and buy out Mikkel Bodker, what are they going to go do? Buy another Mikkel Bodker off the market? Like,
yeah, I don't know. Bring out Rudolph Balcers to save everyone, apparently.
Yeah, for Calder.
Oh man, Rudolph Balcers, Calder champion. You heard it here first. TTG5.
Calder, yeah.
I don't, like I said, I don't. If you asked me this last season, I would be like, fire him into the sun on a rocket.
God.
But this year, I'm indifferent. I don't like Paul Martin's my fire him into the sun on a rocket, or at least buy him out and shake his hand and walk him out the door. I don't have any strong feelings about Mikkel Bodker. I think that there's still room for him on this team, and if there isn't, then Jannik Hansen's doghouse is now empty, and it's going to need a new resident. And I would rather it be Mikkel Bodker than Barclay Goodrow. And that's that. All right, let's get the hell out of here, because this is way too long. We're probably like nearing 2 hours now, and that's just silly. Poor dogs are getting walked by their owners and they're dying. Maybe people are dying while they're listening to this podcast and running, and they might be dying at this point. So let's put them out of misery. Kevin, final thoughts on the week.
Final thoughts on the week. Last week's show, again, I encourage you to go and rewatch it because it was awesome, and so was this one. I thought last week's show, I said we had some missing former Conrads like Aiden Carlson who were on the side of a milk carton. Please let us know of their whereabouts. We heard from Keegan McNally. It turns out he's been in the chat the entire time. He's been watching. He's been chiming in. Keegan, it's so good to see you. Thank you for being a part of our show still, because we really liked you.
I went on.
Yeah, Keegan, way to go. I'm at Kevin Lacey 22. You can follow me on social media, blah, blah, blah. Getting ready for drafting. I'm excited. But first, Stanley Cup Finals, whatever. But drafting.
I went on Keegan's Twitter. It was like a couple weeks ago, just randomly. And I saw that the last thing that he retweeted was something from the World Cup of Hockey. And I was like, oh no, like, did he get, like, I thought maybe he got like picked up by a hurricane or something. And I was like, crap, like I liked that guy, but glad to see he's back and evidently thinks our confusion to his whereabouts is hilarious. You can follow me on Twitter at hockey_jerk. You know what, guys? I'm not a Pittsburgh Penguins fan. Even though it sucks they got eliminated, still not a fan. I hate those guys, obviously.
Those guys. Especially.
But you know what? Yeah, man, there's no way that Evgeny Malkin is one of my favorite players. That guy sucks. But I'll tell you what I am. I am a... right now I'm on the Winnipeg Jets bandwagon, and if that doesn't go well, then I'll be on the bandwagon of whoever comes out on the East, because like I said before, anybody but Vegas.
Word. I am Ian Reed. You can find me at Ian Blogs Hockey. Again, I am going to do some draft profiles. I'm going to try and spit them out as I have time to spit them out. My first one was today. It will not be the last. So definitely check that out on Teal Town USA, my Rasmus Sandin profile.
Rasmus.
Give me feedback. It's not the Rasmus that everyone wants, but he's still good. I like him. Any feedback you have on the article, obviously, let me know. If there's any guy that you think that I should be profiling that could go around the 21st spot, let me know, and I'll make sure it's on my list of names to do. Other than that, obviously appreciate you watching and want you to subscribe and hit up our audio and all that stuff. And I will end with Vince G's dad joke. PDB's Doghouse now has 2 Great Danes in it. And with that, good night.